game called Journey, which is a beautiful game. I think a lot of us know about it, and a lot of us don't really know about it. Uh, it's like Shobik just said, it's a visual treat, and it's really lovely on the ears as well. So, from generally being criticized as violent and or childish to being completely ignored as an important cultural artifact, video games haven't really had it easy. But amidst all the big, bulky, best-selling, stereotypically aggressive AAA titles, some game companies that game company dare to differ. Journey is an indie adventure game co-developed by That Game Company and Santa Monica Studio, published by Sony Computer Entertainment and directed by Genova Chen. It was released for the PlayStation 3 via PlayStation Network in March 2012 and ported to PlayStation 4 in July 2015. It was later ported to Microsoft Windows in June 2019 and iOS in August 2019. Journey is actually a spiritual. Wait a minute. I think my computer just froze. Can you see what's coming to on the screen?
We can see the first slide. We can see the first slide still.
I'm somehow not able to. Give me a quick minute. Okay, yeah, now it's working, I think. So, Journey is a spiritual follow up to Flow and Flower and further reinstates the developer That Game Company's co designed philosophy of provoking an emotional reaction from the player, basically. And Journey has won several Game of the Year awards and received several other awards and nominations, including a Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media nomination for the 2013 Grammy Awards, which was the first time a game had been nominated in this category, basically. So Genova Chen, the director of this game, wanted to make this game as intuitive as possible so that players could explore the game world without direct instructions and feel a sense of wonder as they progress through the game. To achieve this, the team took a minimalistic approach for the game design and removed any elements that would distract or stand in the way of the others. The more the developers started to remove, the more they started to see the game's true potential. Genova Chen says in one of his interviews, quote, "We build our games like a Japanese garden, where the design is perfect when you cannot remove anything else. I think that by doing that, the voice of your work is more coherent." Uh, the quote ends here. And the reason behind that, in his own words, is that if you have a lot of clutter on the top, the work may be more impressive, but you won't really know what it's trying to say. Games have to be more emotional. People need to experience a powerful range of feelings. Jen applied this Japanese garden philosophy to the whole game, even to his main character. As you can see, this character doesn't really have arms. And there were two interesting reasons behind that. One, arm-based climbing wouldn't be supported in the game anyway, so the arms were removed. Number two, the other reason for removing the arms was to avoid players from thinking that they were somehow able to pick up weapons and do damage to the other players, since this would simply end up distracting them from the real gaming experience. Journey went through several prototypes but had one core idea in mind, that is player coordination. It was very important to Chen to move away from the typical defeat slash kill slash win mentality of most video games, and instead he wanted to focus on creating an emotional connection between the players. For this, he had to reinvent the very nature of online multiplayer games. Chen says the goal was to create a game where people felt they are connected to each other, to show the positive side of humanity in them. A lot of games today have a list of quests, places to go, items to collect, and rewards to receive. We just ignore each other. So, in order to make players care about each other, we have to remove their power and remove their tasks. The second thing that Chen did was innovate. He changed the way we communicate in video games. When the team was exploring how players would communicate with each other, they tried several conventional options such as voice chat, text chat, thumbs up, thumbs down options, etc. However, during playtesting, they quickly noticed that those options created toxic experiences for the players, since people would end up actually using the thumbs down option more than the thumbs up option. Text chat was especially tricky because of the lack of a keyboard on the PlayStation 3. So instead, the team opted to focus on the interactivity more than on interactive communication instead of traditional communication. They implemented a ping system that allowed for a more ambiguous and yet meaningful form of communication. They can either ping quickly or send out a large ping, and it's up to the player to figure out what the other player is trying to say. This form of communication actually turned out to be a more fun and interesting experience rather than a potentially toxic one. The third thing that they did away with rather, is the use of usernames. Not displaying usernames was a very risky idea at the time, but Genova Chen was very clear about what he wanted. So he thought that usernames end up distracting you because sometimes they are quite offensive, and they end up really distracting you from playing the game as they intended you to play. But Sony wasn't quite happy with this decision because multiplayer games tend to sell better when you can invite your friends to play with you. By stripping the game of these common elements found in most online video games, such as objectives, maps, leaderboards, voice chat, usernames, and so on, the developers created an environment where cooperation wasn't forced upon players. Instead, it's completely up to the players if they want to take a solo trip or if they want to share their journey with somebody. According to Chen, this is where the emotional connection comes from. If a player actively chooses to cooperate with someone else without being forced to do so, then that is the real essence of connecting to players. Coming to the game now, as its very name suggests, journey is about the voyage of life from its beginning all the way to its end, its ups and downs, and the fellow travelers that we meet along the way. In terms of the game's plot, it's not really explicit or that important for your gaming experience either. The basic plot slash story is interestingly drawn on the murals, as you can see on the screen. This is just one of the many murals in the game, which are just thrown across, which you come across when you cross a certain level. But while you're playing the game, it's sometimes, like for me, it didn't make any sense when I came across these murals when I played them first. It's only when I started to work to look into this for my presentation that I realized that they actually tell a story. Uh, the story tells of what these red clothes the of these red clo- the story tells us of what these red clothes are, what these red clothed creatures are, what these people are, and where they came from and what happened. So, according to the murals and the hieroglyphs on them, in the beginning we see beautiful. So when you clear the first level, the first mural that you come across, you see that in the beginning we see beautiful hills and fields of plant life and trees, along with birds in the sky, a peaceful, harmonious scene. And then we see several humans slash people slash creatures, whatever you want to call them, in white robes. The people in white robes discover a magical resource slash power from the red cloth, And they use this red cloth to provide power, energy to their cities and buildings. Eventually, these cities uh, get eventually cities got into the places where mother nature used to live, and trees started disappearing and buildings and machines started taking their place. Eventually the civilization started running out of the cloth, and their cities started losing power. This caused the white robed people to become greedy with their cloth and started fighting with each other over this. This caused a great war, as evidenced by two opposite two opposing sides of white robed people that can be seen on the screen, armed with their dragon like mechanical creatures, built to seize each other's cloths, resources, and lock them up. With all the cloth locked up, these man made creatures eventually started destroying the civilization, and everybody just disappeared, and life reached a standstill. Desert sands blew over their ruins and drowned entire cities in sand. The stars in the sky that appear in one of the murals, they look like symbols that came from the humans. I guess those stars are the remains of the humans who once lived in the world. They see their ruined lands and join powers to put all their hope into the reincarnation of one person who arrives in the form of a shooting star and turns out to be you, the traveler in the red robe. This traveler's goal is to learn about what happened through the clues left by the ancestors many years ago, and restore as much of magical world by freeing the red cloths and helping the other travelers on their journey so they can realize the same thing. As you could have as you could have figured, that this story is rife with religious undertones and it's actually based on a very popular narrative template created by Joseph Campbell called The Hero's Journey, which dates back to 1949. Campbell divided uh, Campbell divided the template into three acts: departure, where the hero follows the call to adventure; number two, initiation, where we see the hero traveling to an unknown world where they must face a set of challenges; and return. In the last act, the hero returns to the normal world with the rewards they received from overcoming the challenges in the previous act. This three-act structure is widely used in all forms of media, such as movies, TV shows, books, video games, etc. According to Genova Chen, the hero's journey essentially is a narrative structure of any life transformation. Journey journey is very much a classic parable of life. This next part of my talk is going to be about Journey's wonderful game design and how the creators have managed to tell us a beautiful story through its captivating gameplay. Oftentimes, in most video games, even with the most compelling storylines, sometimes they fail to tell the story through gameplay. Such games usually end up relying on cutscenes. Gameplay and story then become two separate entities that are very disconnected. Such games have to stop at various instances to tell its story in a more traditional or cinematic way. There's usually the game, and then there's a story surrounding the game which provides context. Now, this is where Journey is quite different. You can only experience the true narrative of the story, or the true uh, you can get the true narrative experience only through playing it, not through the cutscenes. And the highly ambiguous cutscenes after each level that we do get to see, they tell you only of the plot or the context as to what exactly might have happened before our character even turned up at the desert. That too often gets neglected because nowhere in the game are you supposed to really understand the symbols on the wall during the cutscenes. This is a subtle way to let the players know that the game places more importance on the subjective narrative experience of the game instead of the plot. The game begins with you alone in a desert, and this first level is mostly used to teach you how to play. You're isolated and drawn towards the mysterious mountain looming in front of you. The experience feels kind of limited. Upon moving to the second level, the world suddenly opens up and there's a lot more space to explore and see around. A lot more things are happening. A red cloth bridge that you create, again with zero instructions, creates a clear path forward. Even though the world is a little too vast and a little and kind of confusing, you are still being guided, and the game is pretty easy going at this point. But the game truly opens up in the third level. The desert in front of you this time is just much larger in size, and the path forward starts feeling a little daunting and intimidating. The atmosphere is still pretty calm and easygoing, but with a little hint of uncertainty. However, you do get guided a little by the cute. You'll see a lot of cute cloth creatures flying around you that would guide you, and you can actually ride them and fly with them. Level 4 is happens to be my favorite level, is where things become really fun, jovial, and exciting. If you're anything like me, you'll possibly experience pure joy while you're gliding and sliding through the golden glistening sand dunes. But doesn't last. Doesn't last long. As you can see on the screen, then we come across we fall into this tunnel that's underground, and you're just suddenly dropped into the abyss of an ominous underground cave that you were not even expecting. You are met with a dark, foreboding atmosphere for the very first time. You come across these massive flying dragon type machines that will tear off pieces of your scarf if they spot you, and thus reducing your maneuverability. You soon notice a shift towards upward mobility, as well as you use the seaweed as you use the seaweed and jellyfish-esque cloth creatures to push towards the top. This level ends with a thrilling, tense descent into the next stage, which is even more vertically designed. You have to find glyphs and activate them to raise the water level, allowing you to quickly rise back up to the surface. By the time you reach the seventh level, you realize that the game's end is fast approaching, and at this point, and you find yourself already at the base of the mountain, where you are faced with strong, overwhelming cold winds that drain the power of your magical scarf. You come across even more of those dragon like mechanical creatures, and the closer you get to the mountain, the weaker you get. The only way to not immediately freeze and die is by staying close to your partner, and this warmth between you keeps you both from getting frozen to death. But despite all your might and effort, you collapse in the snow and freeze to death very soon. But after a few moments, just when you think that the game was over and you died and you don't understand what's happening, six white robed figures appear and restore you to your full power, and they seem to help you ascend to the peak of the mountain. You find you find yourself flying like a feather with a really long scarf. You see the beautiful clear blue skies for the first time in the game. And as you fly closer to the mountain chasm, the beautiful golden stream of glowing symbols turn you into a glowing golden entity too. You finally reach the peak and start walking towards the light and become one with this beautiful light, signifying the end of your journey. But wait, just when you think the game is over, you start you see a star shooting forth from the peak, which would be viewed by the next traveler attempting to make the same journey as you. This kind of experience couldn't have been narrated in words, actually. The levels are designed and ordered in such a beautiful way that each level denotes a stage of life, reflecting the distinct feelings, emotions, characteristics associated with them. The early levels are full of wonder, mystery, exploration, and joy, reflecting the innocence of childhood. And it's visible even in the color palette that they use for it. The descent into the tunnels recall the feeling of anxiety and uncertainty we all feel when childhood slowly leaves us and the responsibilities of adulthood come knocking. The ascent up the temple represents the quickening of time as it passes, pushing us closer to our inevitable death, which you face head on, like we face the cold, harsh snowstorms towards the end of the game. You slowly, you slow down. You slow down with time. You slow down as you age, and you eventually die. And after this death, as a lot of as a lot of religions also believe, you ascend to the heavens where everything is more glorious, transcendental, and have a divine aura around them, including yourself. While you quite literally find yourself walking towards the light, another traveler just begins their journey. And the true beauty of all of this is expressed without a single word or text or explicit plot points or instructions or dialogue. This is just pure game design, aided by fantastic visuals set to a phenomenal soundtrack by Austin Wintory. In the next and final part of this talk, I'm going to talk about Journey's unforgettable soundtrack and the story it tells without using any lyrics. Journey is a game that does not entertain anything that doesn't align with its core idea. Journey's story, while quite abstract, ends up being told through every single part of the game, from the gameplay, art style, colors, to the interaction you have with your fellow travelers. And of course, its soundtrack. Journey is inseparable from its core, quite literally, actually. There's no option to turn down music in this game. But that makes sense because its music is very critical in creating the emotional ties to the game world and revealing the subtle inner workings of the story. Journey opens with a crescendo of orchestra and white noise before cutting to silence. Let me play the video for you.
Poonam, we can't hear.
You can't
Uh,
hear?
No, can you go on the options and there's a you can let us listen to the sound. If you do that, please, we'll be able to hear.
Right. Share computer sound, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Let me see. Let me know if you can hear.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this acts, this the clip that you just heard, this orchestra, this acts as an auditory palate cleanser for what lies ahead of you, and this is the last we shall hear of Journey's famous orchestra for quite some time. The music in the beginning of the game is actually almost entirely this droning, buzzing electronica that seems to go really well with the harsh, relentless desert sun and the strange, desolate place you have found yourself in. Over the course of the game, this electronic noise will slowly get replaced by an orchestra, and by the time you finally reach the summit of the mountain, the music will be completely orchestral. However, for now, we are stuck with this atonal noise, our only solace being occasional instrument solos that accent the score, such as this lovely cello performance of the main theme of Journey when you reach the title screen. Oh, I forgot to show you the atonal noise that I was talking about. Let me play it. Now, coming to the cello. All right. So, interestingly, this main theme that you just heard is actually the only recurring musical theme in Journey, with slight variations sprinkled throughout the entire game. Instead of having various themes that act as leitmotifs and can represent characters or places, Austin Wintory does this through instruments. There are five instruments that Austin chose as soloists to carry the score. The first being the cello that we just heard on the title screen. The cello is the foundation of Journey's score and happens to be the only consistent instrument throughout the game. And this is because the cello represents you, or rather, the red robed journeyer that you control. In an interview with the Sixth Axis, Austin says, musically, it's like a big cello concerto where you are the soloist and all the rest of the instruments represent the world around you, including the other players. Very early in the game, we are introduced to the second soloist. That's the flute. Let me play this video. It's the flute, although the flute, even though it's usually it's the deeper sounding variant, it's the bass flute. It appears when you receive your magical scarf that allows you to fly. It pops up again when you do things like releasing these flying scarf bits, and most notably, it features in the confluence scenes in which you meet your ancestors, who are these tall, white robed people who show you the way throughout your journey, acting as your spiritual guides. So, the bass flute is kind of representative of these ancestors and civilization of people that they and the journeyer belong to. As alluded to before, there's also a soloist dedicated to your companion. In fact, actually, two, the harp and the viola. This is where the dynamic music design really begins to shine. Whenever you are connected to another player, the harp and the viola are seamlessly added to whatever music is playing in the background. And the level in the mix is actually dependent on the distance between the two of you. The closer you are, the louder they will be. For example, the caged cloth type creature, you come across this caged cloth come across this cloth type creature who is caged, and when you release it, the track threshold from the track called threshold starts playing. If you're alone, all you hear is the flute solo backed with some percussion and plucked cello strings. But if you have a partner, you get to hear the beautiful harp and viola performances. Or alternatively, if you don't release the creature at all, the threshold track never even cues in. Instead, you'll just hear an ambient piece. The game is full of moments such as this. Adding just two subtle instruments to the score changes a lot, and it makes the world feel much less empty because now you have a friend with you. I'll try to show you the example. All right. The fifth and the final solo instrument is called the serpent. The serpent is an old 18th century instrument that's a cross between a brass instrument and a woodwind. You mostly hear it in the cave area where these mechanical dragons roam, and they will tear parts of your scarf if they see you. Let me play this. As you notice, this area has a very different feel to it compared to the other levels we just saw. And Yeah, so this area has a very different tone compared to the rest of the game, rest of the entire game actually, and it's a massive, and it creates a massive contrast to where we just were, sand surfing through the ruined city where the music is the most orchestral and fun it's been up until this point. I'll show you the difference, the contrast that I was talking about. This is just visually the cave level that we're traveling. All right. So this serpent is the only brass-like instrument in Journey's score, and it gives a resonating low hum, which Austin then layers on top of itself over again to create an ominous sound. The otherworldly hum of the serpent is reinforced by the cave area being the only section of the entire game not featuring a cello, and it also sees the return of the electronica found at the beginning of the game, bringing back the feelings of isolation in a foreign land. Let me play the previous, yeah, this one again, just so that you can tell the difference. After after this cave level, the score continues on its orchestral journey until blooming into a full orchestra on the track of Apotheosis, which plays as you approach the mountain summit. All right. So, as you can see, even though it's not one of the five soloists, you could say that the orchestra also represents something very important, and that is the end of the journey. It represents the mountain. the sheer joy of reaching the destination. At the very end of the game, when you walk into the light, making it obvious that the journey has been a metaphor for life. And as we do so, the very last thing we hear is also one of the first things we heard in the game. That is the cello. This solo cello performing the main theme one final time perfectly mirrors the title screen at the beginning of the game, giving the whole experience a sort of a cyclical feel. After this scene ends, the credits roll, and this is where we finally get some hints as to what the game was actually about. It shows a sequence of your spirit leaving the mountain and going back through all the areas you have traveled, returning to the beginning of the game, hinting towards reincarnation. All the while, a song called I Was Born for This plays, which features lyrics in 5 different languages. The lyrics are actually quotes from famous pieces of literature. Translated to English, they are To each his day is given, is from the Aeneid. Time it is for me to go, from Beowulf. Lost is my homecoming, from the Iliad. Along this road goes no one, this autumn eve. Is a haiku by Japanese poet Matsuo Basho. And finally, the titular quote, Do not pity me, I was born for this, which is attributed to Joan of Arc. What links all these works together is that they are all famous examples of a common narrative structure known as the monomyth or the hero's journey, a a story archetype that I talked about in the beginning, that is followed by everyone from Jesus Christ to Luke Skywalker to Neo in Matrix. The hero's journey was outlined by Joseph Campbell, as I mentioned earlier, and he describes it as a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a reign of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are encountered there, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. I shall play the I'm sorry, let me just, something happened. So I should just go to the towards the end of it. All right. This story of journey is the story of journey is basically a classic hero's journey, as I mentioned earlier. And a single playthrough of journey represents the first two sections, the departure from the common world and overcoming of trials to receive a blessing. However, the final part of the hero's journey is what you see in the credits. You see your spirit returning to the beginning, and the game brings you right back to the main menu, inviting you to go on a new journey. Only this time you have the ultimate boon, that is the knowledge of the game that you can bring to other people and help them through it. The game makes you wonder about the purpose of your own journey and how it could actually simply be to make other people's journeys easier, even when they are complete strangers in a virtual world. And this is told through every aspect of the game. It's built into the gameplay. It's as traveling alongside someone else will refill both of your scarves, flying power. Um, my God, what's happening? Right. Yeah, this is the last slide. That's why it's acting like this. Sorry. So yeah, where was I? The game tells you about what it is about through everything, through the gameplay, through the visual, through the music, through every single thing. Uh, and it's actually only through the visuals and the music that we get to know the true essence of the game. These are our only links to the hero's journey outside of the name of the game itself, but also in this moment, in the moment that I couldn't put up a video of that particular moment. I didn't have a video of that. The first time when we hear the orchestra is when we see the meteor shooting from the mountain, which we now know is the spirit of a journey or returning from the mountain. So the orchestra doesn't so much represent the mountain itself, but what this mountain represents, which is the final goal of our journey: to receive the boon, to return from your life, to return from your journey in life, whatever that may be, and use the knowledge you gained along the way to be a blessing to other people who are then able to go and do the same for even more people, thus continuing the circle infinitely. And that is just beautiful, and words couldn't have described it. The words couldn't have done justice to this experience at all. To wrap things up, this game's stunning visuals and beautifully seamless soundtrack, which, by the way, if you look up the steps in the hero's journey template and the names of the songs Austin Wintory has chosen for his songs are quite similar. And this game, along with its visual and specifically the visuals and the oral experience, makes you feel so many things. You feel awe, you feel wonder, you feel curiosity, you feel optimism, you feel isolation, you feel fear of losing your partner in the game, fear that your partner would just leave you and would probably and you'll be there alone again, fear of these wonderful dragon-like mechanical creatures, so many things. And if you play this game with another player, you will experience these same feelings, or perhaps even more feelings, with a total stranger. You will grow to care about them, even without knowing anything about them. And when the game truly ends and you finally see the usernames of the people who took this journey with you, you are left with a beautiful feeling of love and gratitude towards your companions. Something along the lines of, thank you so much, all of you wonderful people, for joining me on this unforgettable journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poonam, for this fantastic presentation. Really fascinating and beautiful. Now we are open for questions. Um, so okay, okay. We already have a question from Neil. Neil asks, could you elaborate on the ping system of communication? In what way is it better than text to speech or voice to speech communication?
uh, I'm trying to wait a minute, I'll just try to switch on my video. Okay, I can't find it. Anyway, so yeah, it's better. I mean, okay, let me just tell you from my own experience. As a woman, I have faced a lot of, harassment on these, especially when it's voice chat. The moment the other person comes to know you're a woman, the chances of a woman getting harassed just increases manifold. Plus, when you have no voice chat, no text chat, or anything like that, it's difficult to tell the other person's nationality, race, or gender even. So I think it gives everybody a fair kind of a platform where you just enjoy the game as you are, on the inside, not as whatever identity you hold on the outside world.
So,
Yeah, okay, I figured out how
okay,
to open
can
my
I just
video.
request you to
Yeah, yeah.
mute yourselves if you're not asking a question? We have a question from Lena Joseph. She's raised her hand.
Right.
So, Lena, can you just
Yeah.
unmute yourself and ask your question? You can unmute yourself if you want now.
Hi, Poonam. Hi, Lena. What's up?
Okay, so this is a very beautiful presentation. First of all, congratulations. My
Thank
question
you.
was, I liked how you covered the musical influence in the game throughout the different levels. I mean, that might motivate me to take a look at the game. What
Please do.
exactly motivated you or made you interested in, looking into it? I mean, going into all the details, figuring out how it is, where does, how did it begin, and, everything. What was the main point that triggered your interest in it?
I mean, I, for one, really enjoy aesthetic games. I really enjoy eye candy games, as Shobik mentioned in the beginning of of this presentation. I really just and that's as simple as that. I really enjoy beautiful games with beautiful soundtracks, and that's why I chose to only focus. I tried to only focus on those two aspects for the presentation today, because I could go into the literary aspect, the story, the narrative, or the religious undertones. There's a lot that can be unpacked from the game, but I just chose to talk about what I really liked in the game, and that's it.
Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Lina.
We have another comment by Shujoy. Fantastic presentation, Poonamdi. Found the reference to Basho very apt in keeping with the overall theme of Journey. Any other questions? Okay, Mehreen has a question. So please just unmute yourself and ask the question. And Lina, can I just lower the hand? Because, yeah, unless you have another question.
No, please do. Thank you. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Hi, Poonam.
Hi, Marin. What's up?
Am I? I'm good. Yeah, this was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed like
Thank you so much. Thank
attending
you
it.
so much.
Yeah, and it's usually like you've been discussing all the elements that usually don't come into most academic presentations, and I really enjoyed how
Yeah,
like detailed it is.
yeah.
But my question is like some of the things that caught my attention is like I mean I have to before that I have to admit that as you know I'm not much of a video game player. more like of a passing interest and curiosity. And interestingly, I knew about Journey, and you mentioned it, and I was
Hmm.
really interested. So by what you said about aesthetic, I mean, how they followed the Japanese gardens, like the structure of, I
Yeah.
mean, how taking away and paring it down so that the essence comes through. And there is a sort of, a very feminist grounding that I could feel, because it's also not focusing on gender or favoring a
Hmm.
particular gender when it comes to communication, when it comes to presentation, when it comes to the presentation of the body of the player itself, because what you
Correct.
said
Correct.
about the
Correct.
arms not being there. And so I'm just curious about how the game has been accepted in the larger, gaming world, and how the reception is, because it's a completely new template from my limited knowledge of video games. So I just wanted to ask you about
Yeah, wonderful comment, Merin. The thing is that I honestly don't really know too many people who have played this game, except the people in Game Studies India, who we talk about different kind of games all the time. But and we also
that. Right.
happen to have we just happen to know about a lot of games because we talk about a lot of games. But that being said, when I sometimes speak to quote unquote hardcore gamers, a lot of them don't know about this game at all. And I mean, I think there's this problem that generally, like in Bollywood, so generally what people end up watching is the masala
Of
movies,
course.
and these kind of indie games which are very, this is a very short game actually, this is just 1.5 hours, and these kind of games don't really get as much popularity as the masala games do,
Hmm.
which I hope
but
was
but
not
is
true,
that
but
yeah, but is this template relatively new to the gaming world? Like, is it a
hmm, I don't think it's new, it's just not that common,
right?
I think. Yeah, I think Shovik Mukherjee will be able to tell us more about this, I think. I
Before
don't
that,
think it's
we have
hmm.
other questions that we will take. But Poonam, please finish. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was
Did
just
you?
thinking about any other games that came before Journey, which were like this. I'm just trying to think about games like Journey that became before Journey.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, except of course Flow and Flower, that's
Yeah.
from the same game
Yeah.
developing game developers. So yeah, we'll talk
Okay,
about
okay.
this. I'll
Yeah,
Yes,
there,
definitely
yes.
there,
explore
there
Thank
it.
you
are
so
there
much.
are a few
Yeah.
games which I can also talk
Okay,
about in a bit. So
okay.
there is uh, okay. There is another question from Samya, and Samya Roy asks, says Poonamdi, first of all, lovely presentation. Minecraft
Thank
gives
you.
text notations uh, for sorry, I'm just kind of trying to scroll this. Yeah, text notations of all the in-game sounds, which adds that element of accessibility, but it does not feature
Hmm.
the BGM. Do you think that in a BGM background music heavy game like Journey, there could be it could be made more accessible?
That is an excellent question. I was thinking about this the whole time because when I was playing the game, I was just imagining that somebody who is hearing impaired, how would this gaming experience be for them? But I think that's the beauty of. I think my own interpretation. I might be completely wrong, but I think the beauty of the game of this beautiful game called Journey is that the music and the visuals go really well together. I mean, even when you're pinging in the game, when you're trying to communicate, there's a certain there's a when you make a small ping, there's a small glow, and then when you make a bigger ping, when you press the key a little longer, the glow is a bit bigger. So you not only get to hear when the other person is trying to communicate with you, you also see it in the and you can the glow is such that you can see it from anywhere in the game if the of course if your partner is close by, but accessibility is definitely a thing that we in video games need to think about.
Yes, I mean, yes, issues of disability
Hmm.
and studies in video games are becoming more and more important now. Well, they've always been important, but people are thankfully paying more attention to them now. And I think. We have another. Okay, so Samya says I was thinking about using the haptics of the new PS5 controller. Okay, interesting. Actually, a long time ago, when I was in Nottingham, we used the Wiimote to help visually challenged people to walk through the
Mm.
haptics of the Wiimote, the Nintendo Wii remote. Yeah. Anyway, but that's a so there's another really fascinating question, and this is from Aditya, who has been your co-player, Poonam. So he asks, she says that this was reliving the entire experience once again. Thank you so much for the depth of those experiences. I paused to look at the glyphs to understand what they meant, and as they opened the way into the next level. Also, as there was no way to interact with your co-player, the interaction happened through a music note and an alphabet from the glyphs. Now I'm
Mm.
reminded by the end there were 6 players playing in the same world, and we had a unique alphabet that was inscribed in our robes. Also, we keep collecting
Mm.
these lost alphabets throughout the games, and the length of the scarf increases. I was wondering if the game also challenges our ability to communicate with the language known and familiar to us. Was the entire game about the way we communicate? Mm.
Yeah. I mean, while communicating in the game, and I was thinking about it, that I was just thinking that is that how animals feel? Because that's, I mean, we because this is such a new way of communicating in a game. It was just quite interesting to communicate that way. Honestly, it was just very new.
I think we're running out of time, so I will end with a
Mm.
final question, which I'm so tempted to ask Poonam. I've been waiting my turn, which is that is it possible because of this unique these very different, if I might say, even subaltern methods of communication, which are not kind of the
Mm.
accepted the normative means of communication. Is it possible also to perhaps think of journey as a critique of the hero's journey? I know Genova Chen has said that he has based it on the monomyth,
Mm.
but does it actually work against the kind of setting a plot within a monomyth, uh, given the fact that there is so much that is left to music, to the auditory, which is very affective. It
Mm.
it affects you. It
Mm.
changes depending on how you feel about it, and there's a second part of it, which is that the monomyth assumes an entitled individual, a hero, somebody who has some vested power or entitlement. But
Mm.
it's sometimes playing Journey. I am a bad player of Journey. I haven't gone as far as you have. It makes you feel helpless as well. And
Yes.
yeah, not in a meaningful kind of way, in almost kind of an existentialist kind of way. So I was tempted to read Journey in an existentialist Sartrean kind of experience fashion as
Ah.
well. So I was just thinking, does it? I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here.
Two questions you asked, right? Both of them are quite
Sorry.
interesting.
Yes, my
No, no,
my
it's
bad.
okay.
Yeah.
So, the hero's journey, like I said, I didn't talk about it too much because there are things that I do find problematic in this, the whole hero's journey thing. I mean, one of the things that really caught my eye was this when Joseph, the 17 steps that Joseph Campbell has
Mm.
mentioned in the hero's journey template. One of them is the woman temptress, and that immediately was kind of.
Yeah.
So I didn't really feel like just directly using hero's journey ka template for this game this game because this game, uh, although it might, from I mean superficially it might seem like, okay, this is a hero's journey example, but I don't think it's true, because this game is just way more than what the template or any template or any narrative template that we can even think can even you know do to it. So I don't think hero's journey template really applies to this game. Okay, fine, superficially we can talk about it maybe, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And I was while working on this presentation, I came across this wonderful article slash video by a wonderful lady. I'm forgetting her name. She was talking about heroine's journey, how a heroine's journey is so different from the hero's journey, and how we need to maybe move towards genderless sort of we need to be more more inclusive when it comes to the journey aspect. So I didn't read it thoroughly, but it was I think I'll try to find it and share it with you guys if I can. But it's a great, that was a great perspective.
I think thank you very much, Poonam. That's a fantastic kind of response, and again going beyond the hero's journey, perhaps
Yeah,
by
yeah.
the Genova Chen himself, however, does very explicitly say that he looks at the monomyth
Mm,
as one of his inspirations. So you're spot on there. So I'm like really thank you. This is such an interesting kind of, and oh my God, I'm just thinking about kind of music and plot, how I mean
yeah,
this the treatment of music that you've kind of given us.
yeah,
It's totally a very different kind of way of looking at storytelling, and Journey does it so well, and you bring it out so well in your presentation. So if anybody does anybody have any other questions, we can take maybe one more. Uh, and also do think of joining our WhatsApp group. I've put up the link there, and also there's a Facebook group, and there will be talks happening well every other week hopefully, and podcasts as well. And we are trying to build a game studies community. We hope you will be part of this community. And yeah, so uh, I think, and so if there are any other questions, do let me know. Uh, okay, and with Samya, I also wish everybody a very happy New Year, and yes, indeed, a better New Year. And I've done something
yeah.
quite unusual for me, that my notes to this presentation are something like this. So
Oh,
I was trying to imagine the ancestors and my experience of playing Journey, and bringing them all together, the entire story on one plane. So
yeah.
thank you everyone. Thank you so much, Poonam, for kind of agreeing to present this fascinating paper. And please join us again in the next kind of iteration of Game Studies India Adda. We will advertise very soon on our Facebook group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.